But it's
it's a documentary, so yeah. Yeah. I was able to sort of
It's just enough space for my dad to write and my mom to work on her own projects.
Please enjoy
Oh my gosh,
Yep.
Megan, what are you doing here? Jason's coming in?
Got a teacher?
I do have a teacher.
Sign on the dotted line.
Mr. Edwards.
Come right in.
be nice to the guests.
Dang, Tony, you're signing on all of these.
Oh,
You're in all these classes.
look at them here. My car pick it up. Here. Some joker named Alan Abel. All right. Time for the show. Tony Clifton show. I want to welcome you here to the DePaul Humanities Center. I'm H. Peter Steeves. And we're going to start this show off right with a song. Who wants a song, eh? Come on. How about the old classic national anthem? Okay. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? What? Hey. Get off my stage. Is that nice show? Short on time? Is that it? Short on time? One more song. Okay. 3 more songs. Come on now. Hey. You want me to go? I see. You want me to go? Oh, I'm ruining everything. Oh, Peter. Oh, come on, everybody. Oh, Peter. Oh, oh, oh. You want me to go? Definitely. Short on time? Short on time. All right. But I just want to say, if I had made one person here happy tonight, it would all been worth it. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Peter Steeves. It's my privilege to be the director of the DePaul Humanities Center, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the 5th installment in our Year of the Fake series, as tonight we investigate Who Am I Now? The Art of the Con. We first begin, though, as we always begin at the Humanities Center, by acknowledging the traditional territory upon which we gather this evening. Long before Europeans arrived, varied and numerous native people sought to walk gently on this land. They offered assistance to the first European travelers to this territory, sharing their knowledge for survival and living a good life. Among others, the Potawatomi, Ojibwe, Miami, and Illinois inhabited what is now this part of Chicago. And while we here today have no power to honor the treaties that were signed, we do recognize that these treaties were brokered under some duress and deception. So it's our hope tonight to honor the good faith with which the native people of this region entered into these treaties. As Potawatomi Chief Matea is purported to have said at the signing of the 1821 Treaty of Chicago, "This is a small piece of land. If we give it away, what will become of us? The Great Spirit who's provided it for our use allows us to keep it. We should incur his anger if we bartered it away. If we had more land, you should get more. But our land has been wasting away since the white people became our neighbors, and we now have hardly enough left to cover the bones of our tribe." In solidarity with Chief Matea, we recognize the history and legacy of this subjugation, as well as the enduring presence today of Native Americans among our faculty, staff, student body, and community. And it's thus that we seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on true respect, as we also reaffirm our general and driving dedication to finding ways both institutionally and personally for the work that we do at the DePaul Humanities Center, to be a model of what it means to be dedicated to making our society a more enlightened and just place for everyone in our community. Welcome again. I'll be introducing our special guests in a few moments, but before that, and as means of a general introduction, I thought we might take some time together to think about the two related topics that bring us to each other's company this evening: the idea of the con and the question of personal identity. So traditionally, the confidence man, or con man, was someone who gained someone's confidence, gained an assumption of trust and truth-telling, and then betrayed that trust. A con thus typically took a bit of time to unfold. A personal relationship had to be developed before it was destroyed and exposed as false all along. The con man, and I'll continue to say man here because for once the sexist leanings of our language point at something pretty true. It's usually a male thing. The con man does all of this so that he benefits and you lose. He makes you think that you're in something together, but all you share is that you're both participants in the same game. And very often, you don't even know it's a game. Your mutual well-being, your mutual flourishing, is not on his mind. Herman Melville is actually responsible for the term entering our lexicon. See what I did there? He based his 1857 novel, The Confidence Man, on an article he had read 6 years before in the then not yet failing New York Times. The article was about a man in the Bowery who apparently was stealing people's watches. But rather than picking pockets, he would first convince his victims to hand over their watches of their own free will. It was confounding for the police. Can there be a crime if the so-called victim was some sort of willing participant? Usually in it out of a sense of greed on his own part. There were surely lies that were involved, but was it actually stealing if the property in question had been given rather than taken? Our own complicity in the con, one way or another, has always been there all along. And so, to get us started, I'd like to suggest a big claim. The Enlightenment was a con. Modernity and liberalism were cons as well. Perhaps civilization in general is a long con. Now these are sweeping philosophical pronouncements, I know, but bear with me just a bit here because I think there's some truth to them, and I also think that they help illuminate exactly what we're up against tonight. So let me do something a bit unfair. In the name of brevity, so that we can get to our main event tonight, I'm going to lump several things together that could be separated with only a bit of work. The Enlightenment, modernity, democracy, patriarchy, liberalism, capitalism, imperialism, probably a few more isms as we move forward, can all be seen as a system, a set of mutually reinforcing ideologies and institutions that collectively support each other and give rise to the massive mega machine that we call Western culture, the world which you and I have inherited. And as I suggested to you, that it started as, and remains to this day, one huge con. Think of it this way. Modernity comes to town, more or less around the 17th century, hops off a train that's carrying René Descartes, Thomas Hobbes, and Galileo. It sees the local people as a bunch of rubes and starts causing trouble, promising false riches, pointing to false problems. I imagine modernity singing a song that goes something like this. Friends, either you are closing your eyes to a situation you do not wish to acknowledge, or you are not aware of the caliber of disaster indicated by the lack of general enlightenment in your town. Soon, everyone's gathered, cautiously listening. Oh, you got trouble, my friend. Right here in Western Europe. That's trouble with a capital T, and that rhymes with B, and that stands for being. The townsfolk are intrigued, and now a little worried. They look around at each other. Our being, they think? Oh dear, maybe there's something wrong with our being. Modernity continues. Now, I know all you folks are the right kind of subjects. I'm going to be perfectly frank. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in a social contract, a contract that marks the difference between a state of nature and civil society. That society, it sort of rhymes with B, and that stands for being. The townspeople forget that they're a thriving community, communitarian selves intricately connected to each other in complicated webs of interdependence. And they start to think maybe they actually are modern, isolated, solipsistic subjects, brought together only out of self-interest, each in need of rights, their only true weapon against each other. Can I even be sure my neighbor exists? Shouts an angry townsperson. Suddenly the Enlightenment, who really isn't one of us, but is a secret friend of modernity's, a plant at the back of the crowd, shouts out, pretending to be on our side, "Maybe none of us know anything." "What's that I heard?" says modernity. "Well, sir, you're absolutely right. Right now you know nothing, y'all can learn something. In fact, you can learn everything there is to learn. Complete truth, all revealed by scientific methodology. Yes, G, and that rhymes with T, and that stands for truth." Someone in the crowd faints. Another plant playing a role prescribed by modernity. "On this fine night, I'm talking capital T truth, heading for full disclosure. Expert men, not many women, with skill sets. Shameless hubris that'll grab your son and your daughter with the invisible hand of a self-regulating market. Mass complacency, friend. The unenlightened brain is the devil's playground." And you get the idea. I won't subject you to more of that. The spiel continues, and before long, all of Western Europe has bought into it like frightened parents ordering band instruments for their kids. And you and I now believe that this is the only way to organize our lives. We believe that democracy should never be questioned, the kind of democracy we have. It's the best political system ever invented. And if other people around the world don't agree, we should go find them and probably kill them. We believe that we are all inherently selfish, isolated, and equal. We need a social contract to keep us in line, a set of rights with which to do battle with each other. We believe that science will eventually uncover every truth that exists and that technology will solve every problem. We think that we have an inherent identity, a core ontological way of being, universal in nature. We believe our kids should go to school, sick people should go to hospitals, old people belong in nursing homes, transgressors should be shut up in prisons, and voting makes us free when we do it every once in a while. We willingly give up our lives and everything that matters to a set of institutions to watch over it all, just like the man in the Bowery naively handing over his watch to a confidence man. So modernity and the Enlightenment promised false things, they promised lies, but worse than this, they promised that they would make us rich and make us happy, but only ended up redefining what we mean by rich and happy, so that we're too blind to see they necessarily cannot really deliver, and it's always been a sham. Meanwhile, the ruling class, the experts, the men who pitched us this dream, sit on their trains heading out of town, counting their money with one hand and the number of crushed and collected souls on the other. As you might imagine, given the passion with which I'm telling this story, I have a lot more to say on this topic, but our time is short, and I still want to say something about the question of identity. So if you want to hear the rest of the details of this Enlightenment con, just talk to me when the event concludes tonight. I'm happy to share it all with you. Just need a credit card number, your mother's maiden name, we'll get you all set up. Now really, there is a larger point to all this, actually lots of larger points. One has to do with the sense in which I think that the only immoral thing about a con is not the lie. We all lie all the time, to each other and almost constantly to ourselves. But rather, that some cons are meant to harm. If a con isn't about that, if a con has different ends, then I actually think there's good reason to celebrate the art of the con. So more on this in just a moment, because all of it's related to my second and final main point, and that is that one of the most dangerous things modernity sold us was a deeply flawed sense of personal identity. So let's segue to that by looking at one of the pinnacles of true Enlightenment thought, Kanye West. Now, as you might have heard, Kanye has recently returned to Twitter. He also announced that he's now a philosopher, and he's writing a philosophy book. He further claims that he's writing this book in real time, tweet by tweet. It seems it will be a collection of aphorisms, a style perfectly suited to the medium. Heraclitus and Nietzsche, we imagine, probably would have loved Twitter. So exactly 1 week ago from tonight, Kanye tweeted the following. "In life, we're all trained actors. When we're born, we're ourselves, and then one of the first things we're taught, I presume, is how to act." Now, I spend this moment of our time together on Kanye because it's a great example of one of the central lies of modernity. The idea that we start off as something real and pure, and then society destroys us. One finds this ideology at work in figures from Jean-Jacques Rousseau to Ayn Rand. I'd certainly argue that the institutions of neoliberal civilization do damage to us, but not our inherent being together, That's not the problem. The heart of the mistake here is in thinking that we start off as something real and then later become fake actors and performers. Because the truth is that identity, even at birth, is always an act. You know, it'll take little argument, I imagine, to convince us that we perform something like gender. These conversations are finally part of the larger cultural landscape right now, with a lot of people starting to realize that as long as there's been gender, it's always been a performance. That there are costumes we wear, physical traits we encourage, ways we comport our bodies, ways we talk and act in order to convey to the world what our gender might be. These scripts are historical, and therefore they're subject to change. The fact that we have the ability to think about the scripts that we've been handed and evaluate them ethically, politically, means that these roles are always up for evaluation, though the practical conditions of this change depending on one's measure of power in one's culture. So contrary to the claims of modernity, there is no isolated universal generic self. We are constituted by our roles and relationships. We move from one performance to another. We might say that throughout the day we put on a series of masks to play our parts. But the problem with this metaphor is that a mask is typically put on over one's real face. And the truth is, we don't have a real face. It's just masks all the way down. Peel one off and there's but another mask under that. That's what it means to be a subject. And here's the important part then. Masks don't obscure or lie. They're not covering up who we really are, because they're not covering up anything but themselves. We could think of it this way. Each performance of my identity is one that takes place in a context. I act a certain way with my students when I'm playing the professor. I have a costume I'm wearing. I'm wearing it right now. There's a way that I talk and act. It would be weird if I got home later tonight, I put on a different suit and tie to get ready for bed, and then I said to my wife, "Good evening, my name is Peter Steeves. It's my privilege to spend this evening with you. Here's a PowerPoint about what we're going to be up to tonight." The Peter who is talking to you now wouldn't fit the situation. But of course, all I do is put on a different performance at home tonight. It too has its generically defined scripts and expectations. And when I'm a friend or a brother or a colleague or a shopper or a theater goer or whatever, all I do is start a new performance in that context. Even alone in front of a mirror, I am performing. Even when I'm just born into the world, I'm an actor. To think that there's some moment when I'm truly myself, truly beyond performance, is to think that there's a moment that has no context at all. But every moment has some sort of context to it. Every moment shapes my performance in some manner. And so instead of saying that what I am is something behind the performance, we might say that what I am is the conglomeration, the being together of all of the performances, that my real face is best theorized as thinking about all of the masks I have worn, will wear, could possibly wear. A project that's always open and never decided, since there's ultimately still some context I haven't yet encountered, some new performance I'll eventually have to give. Identity is indeed fluid in this way, but it's also fixed. This is not relativism, but it's also not your Enlightenment father's notion of truth. And so if this is the case, then we cannot critique the con man by saying simply that he pretended to be somebody he wasn't. Seriously, I don't even think that adulthood is really something. I think it's all just a game that we're playing. We act the way that we think adults act, and we hope that's all there is to it. We don't actually become adults. Sometimes, to be honest with you, I find myself doing something, like driving or paying taxes or going to a dinner party, and I think to myself, this is weird. I'm acting like an adult. I'm doing adult things, but I don't know if I feel like an adult. So I'm conning you right now if you believe that I'm adult, or if you believe that you are. It's a game that we're all playing, that we've all agreed to play. So the con man can't be evaluated metaphysically or ontologically, criticized because his identity is just a performance, because we're all always doing that. Instead, we have to decide if the con is good or if it's bad, on a normative ground. We have to look at it ethically, politically, and aesthetically. If I con you into giving me your social security number and then steal your identity, Emptying your bank account and accumulating debt in your name. That's a bad thing to do because I am actively taking up your suffering as my well-being. It's not bad because your identity was yours and yours alone, and I tricked you about my identity. It's bad because I want to prosper by doing you harm. It's really that simple. We have with us tonight several presentations about cons. Beautiful, amazing, glorious con men, perhaps even con women, are at the heart of each of them. So as I introduce each of them to you tonight, I'll try to say a couple of words about why I think it is that we need to celebrate their fakeness and revel in their abilities to be multiple people, calling on us to abandon our complacency. Why it is that we need a good con to expose the cons of modernity. I thus hope that by the end of the evening, you'll agree with me that there is no definitive answer to the question, who am I now? But that there are goals to which we can aspire. I promise that I'll do my best to act this part tonight. And that, my friends, is the truth, or my name isn't Professor Harold Hill. So, on to our main event. Carol Kaufman Kerman is our first special guest this evening, and I'm delighted to introduce you to her. Carol is Andy Kaufman's sister, and it's been a sincere honor to know Carol for nearly 2 decades now. I originally came to know her because her brother was one of my idols growing up. Andy was an actor, comedian, a performance artist, in his own words, a song and dance man. He was, to be sure, an artist before his time. His characters and persona were unlike any comedian before, since Andy let the question of identity always be part of the act itself. He would be foreign man with a heavy accent, cute and vulnerable, or Tony Clifton, who you just met, the vile lounge singer, taking joy in berating someone, or a wrestler who would only wrestle women, taunting them with his prowess in the ring, telling them that they belonged in the kitchen and should be washing the potatoes and scrubbing the carrots. Andy would always play with the blurry lines between these characters. He claimed that he was not Tony Clifton. They even had separate agents. He claimed that he, Andy Kaufman, was the wrestler, and so women ended up hating him. Indeed, Andy always seemed 10 steps ahead of the rest of us. No one ever really knew where his performances began or ended. When Andy conned us, though, it was in order to zap us alive. He wanted to create something, I think, a moment, an epiphany, what they used to call in the 1970s a happening. He wanted to create a chance for us to feel something authentically and deeply together. And in order to do that, he often had to fool us. Part of his brilliance is that he took his characters into contexts where those particular performances were not expected. Sometimes when we go to a comedy club, the place and the moment, all of that itself makes us laugh. When we go to hear a lounge singer, the context itself does a lot of the work for us, shaping our expectations and our enjoyment. But Andy refused to take this easy route. He would refuse to tell jokes in a comedy club, trying to get people to experience anger or embarrassment there instead of happiness. And he'd essentially do comedy in the supper club when it was neither expected nor appreciated, trying to get them to a place where they could eventually laugh. Andy's cons were always for our benefit, creating the catharsis that the very best art creates, forcing us to bypass the cheap emotions we get when an artist merely coasts on the vibe of the context and doesn't try to reshape that context against all the forces of history. If, as I have said, we have scripts forced on us, though we find our freedom in both exploring them and pushing back at them, then Andy is one of our best hopes for freedom. One of us brave enough to accept his thrownness, his historical instantiation, and still to push those boundaries and context to the point of breaking. It's not an exaggeration to say that our world is deeply lessened by his absence, and also that I personally still miss him very much. How lucky I am, though, to have been brought to know Carol through my love of Andy. Carol is an artist herself, a gifted storyteller, an educator, essentially, who shares her narratives with the world and makes us all the better for them. It's a happy thing to be lucky enough to know someone who is smart, talented, thoughtful, gracious, and has a genuinely good heart. Indeed, I'm happy to know her, and very happy to introduce her to you now. Ladies and gentlemen, Carol Kaufman Kerman.
Thank you. That was very lovely.
Okay, well, we have a long way to go. Something Andy would have said, right? Great Gatsby. You know, one of the first things that people ask me about my brother, they say, oh, he must have been so funny at home. Boy, a laugh a minute, huh? And I think I'm disappointing people all the time because I tell them, no, he really wasn't so funny. He was pretty serious, pretty introspective. Around the dinner room table, when my dad would be talking about current events and stocks and bonds and the Vietnam War, Andy would be like doing this thing with his knife. He would take his knife and he would just flip it back and forth to get it to reflect on the light, like harnessing the light or something, and he'd get it just so. I don't know. It's funny the things that you remember. Well, Andy went to school in Boston at Graham Junior College. It was a broadcasting school. And it was Boston, it was cold in the wintertime, and he told me this story about he came into class late one day. And it was cold, so he was bundled up. So he came in, he was late, and so he began to take off his hat and his scarf and his outer jacket and his sweatshirt and his sweater and his gloves. And knowing Andy, he had a slow and methodical way, so everything would be folded just so he wouldn't misplace anything. And everybody started to laugh. The whole class was laughing at him. And he didn't quite understand what was funny. What was he doing that was so funny? But he really liked the reaction. He wanted more of it. But how do you recreate it? It was done so innocently. If he tried to do it again, would it still be funny? And I think maybe that's why he was experimenting so much. Maybe that's why he would go on stage and have a washing machine there and do his laundry, and that was his act. Or maybe he'd go on stage with a sleeping bag and he would fall asleep, and that was his act. Or he had a table and a chair put on the stage, and then he would ask the waitress in the comedy club, he'd order some ice cream, and then he would sit there and he'd eat his ice cream, and that was his act. So I think Andy just played with ordinary things, ordinary slices of life that he would elevate to the stage to see how people would react. So Andy had, back in the 70s, they came out with this little teeny recorder. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, it's fine. Anyway, oh, okay, thank you. A little teeny recorder. And now, is this right or is this left? Is the name Targan up at the top? Bottom. Ah, thank you. So anyway, so he had this little teeny recorder he kept in his pocket, and he would record his friends and family, but he wouldn't tell them. Because he wanted to get real, authentic conversations. So this is Andy.
We're recording?
No, not yet. Was that all right with you?
Oh, yeah. So are we recording now? You go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to if it works.
Because you know what? I'm recording you, too.
Oh, good.
Yes, you want to hear? Yes? Yeah.
Do it for me.
It's hard to explain. Like, for instance, if people buy a record called Andy and His Grandmother, they think, oh, wow, Andy Kaufman made a record with his grandmother. This must be hilarious. And they show a picture of me and my grandmother on the cover. And they like draw in little, people going, laughing at the, and then they put it on, and it's like just a regular conversation. Every day, so, and people are going to say, what? What is this? Well, I like to do that to people, I like to, it's like, it would be like a big practical joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. So he had it with us. We were on a road trip, my mom, Dad, and Andy and I, and we didn't know it, but he was taping us. This was 1978, and we were out in California. And so he captured a slice of life. I mean, he really captured an aspect, especially of my father. My father had the capacity to be angry and playful all in the same beat. So my father's yelling at my mother, I know that I haven't seen Cousin Gerald from before World War II. I just know it. And then right from that, he segues into, La 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 la. He's singing with the passion of Luciano Pavarotti. And he gets everybody in the car singing along with him. And then right from that, we segue into my mother singing an irreverent Yiddish song. And my father is bursting with pride. Huh? Is that great? Huh? Have you ever heard that before? And he's not angry anymore. And Andy? Well, Andy is just reveling in the whole thing. He's reveling that he captured it on tape forever. So, you know, like the professor was saying, like Peter was saying, the con for Andy was like a magic trick. And he loved that he could be fooled. He loved thinking one thing and then realizing he was wrong and laughing at himself. And he really just wanted to do that for everyone, for all of his audiences. He had some characters, you know, Tony Clifton and the wrestling. It wasn't your typical story arc, where he would bring you back safely all the time. Because sometimes he just sort of left you hanging out there. Why? For the jolt, for the emotional jolt. He wanted you to feel agitation and fear and embarrassment. I know they're not the typical emotions that a stand-up would go for. I want to tell you about one of the first cons that keeps coming up in the family lore. Back in the 50s, people didn't worry about their children playing all day and all night. They just figured they were safe. And it was a Saturday afternoon, and we had all gone out. Well, I was a baby, but Andy had gone out to play. And when it came to my parents going into the city to a fancy, fancy affair, they didn't know where Andy was to say goodbye. And the babysitter said, "Don't worry, I thought I saw him go down the street. He's just playing." You know, and playing he was. So my parents get into the car, and they're over the 59th Street Bridge, crossing the East River. They're almost in New York City, and they're driving along, and they hear like a scuffle in the back seat. And all of a sudden, it was Andy. He popped up in the back seat, and he said, "Here I am." You know, and they had to deal with him all dirty, and what were they going to do with him? And, you know, but my dad, he loved to tell that story. You know, he'd say, "That's my boy. What a kidder, huh?" So the summer of 1977, Andy and I hung out together a lot. We would go to this place down in our little town called Fredericks. It was the local soda fountain place. And then we would drive around Long Island looking for something to do. And there was one summer one evening we found a carnival. So we went to the carnival, and there was this tent. And the marquee on the front of the tent said, "Woman turns into gorilla." Now, I had seen this act a couple of years back in Las Vegas, and I was totally bamboozled, so I knew that Andy would love it. So we go into the tent, and the same barker that lured us in now started the show. You know, "Step right up. If you have a weak heart, do not see this show." And, you know, that's getting Andy more riled up, more excited. And it's pitch black in there. And the barker says, "Do not cross this line." It was like a spray-painted line. And there on a makeshift stage, there was a cage. And there was a woman standing there. And then there was this light, this faded light was playing on her, and there must have been some mirror that was creating the illusion, but in her place, there was a gorilla. And it was really, he was bouncing up and down, and Andy and I were just, you know, we were lulled by the bouncing. I mean, we were very comfortable. And then the barker said, "No, steady, steady," because he's like rattling in the cage and stuff. And then the barker says, "Oh no, wait, something's happening. Oh no." And the gorilla, he takes it. He's beating his chest, and he takes the cage, and he rips the door off, and he lunges into the audience. And that's when everybody vacated. Andy and I, everybody ran out of that tent. And Andy and I, we just ran, and we kept running into the middle of the fairgrounds. And then when we caught our breath, Andy looked up, he looked back to the very empty, quiet tent. There was no gorilla. And he realized that he had been duped. And he loved it. He loved it. He just laughed like a little kid. That was just his favorite thing. So 1982, there was a program called Fridays, which was similar to SNL. And Andy went on and he introduced his fiancée, Kathy Sullivan. She was one of Lawrence Welk's regulars. She toured America as a Christian gospel singer. And, you know, they were an unlikely pair because, well, he was Jewish. We were brought up Jewish, and the only time we ever heard the Lord's name was in anger and in vain when my dad would yell. But, you know, this was a different kind of hoax because Kathy was involved as well. I mean, she declared her love for Andy. She said that Andy had become a Christian because of her faith. You know, I always wondered how her religious community felt about that hoax. Well, anyway, I sent Andy a congratulations card, and at the bottom of the card, I put PTL, which short for Praise the Lord. And he showed the card to Kathy, and Kathy said, Andy, only Christians use that. Only they use that phrase. I think your sister became a Christian. Well, I let Andy believe it. You know, I mean, look, a little shock, a little disbelief. Anyway, finally he realized he was hoodwinked, and he just adored it. He loved it. It was so much fun, too. So Andy and I used to, I guess I was a teenager. Maybe he was in his early 20s, because there's 7 years between us. We would just play around the kitchen table. You know, he was experimenting with voices and characters, and he'd say to me, Carol, let's just speak to each other, but not with any English words. And he'd look at me, he'd go, Bishkaloo. No, Mickey, Mickey. No, Bishka, Mickey. He'd say, no, Mickey, Mickey, Kuchile. No, Kuchile, Kuchile, Niki, Niki. Niki, Niki, Kuchile. No, Kichi, Kichi. No. You know, we go on and on like this. There was a program, I mean, I guess, you know, this was a time when he was like, you know, playing around with Foreign Man, developing the language and that sort of thing. And then there was a program on TV, some of you might remember, called The Bowery Boys. And there was the head of the gang. He was like a no-goodnik. He was very mean. And I don't know why Andy and I just took it upon ourselves to come up with a character, a voice, that would melt even this guy's heart. Would you be my friend? Please, would you be my friend? I don't have any friends. Please, I really need a friend. And we just had so much fun. And some of those characters' voices went on to be part of his performance. We would watch the television. We had a black and white TV in our kitchen, and we would watch wrestling. And he'd say, Carol, look at this. Look at the way they hate the bad guy. Look at the way the bad guy's just strutting around. Oh, isn't that great? Now that's real theater, Carol. Oh, that's what I want to be when I grow up. Well, Andy's dream did come true. It was 1982. He was at the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, billed as a real wrestler, wrestling against the King, Jerry the King Lawler. Now, Jerry had put him in a very, what was it called? No. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, he put him into a hold that was actually illegal, and it was actually banned from the Coliseum. That night, you know, Jerry lost the fight because he was disqualified, and Andy was taken off to the hospital and put into traction. It was worth the risk. Andy was so happy to be billed finally as a real wrestler against a man. And after he died, when we were going through his room, we found all these uncashed checks. And his girlfriend said he didn't have the heart to cash them because this was such a dream come true. Let's see. Well, So whether it was a good guy, foreign man, or Tony Clifton, you know, he wanted to create for you an emotional adventure, as Peter said, an adventure that would beg the question, what the hell just happened? And was that for real? Park West, here in Chicago, 1982. I was there, and here's how it went down. So, good guy Andy was the master of ceremony that night, and he introduced the masked magician. It was a magician that wore a mask over his face, never revealing his identity. And he came out, and within 5 minutes, he had revealed the old, ancient, 2,000-year-old Chinese those round linking trick. Thank you, the rings. Just revealed it. And then after that, he said that he wanted to bring 3 people from the audience up on stage to hypnotize them. So Andy feigned being uncomfortable with this, and so he said, look, I'm just giving the stage to you. I don't know if I like what you're doing, and he left. And as the new MC, there was the masked magician. So he calls up 3 people, or 3 plants. There was Andy's friend Joe, there was Andy's friend Lucy, and there was me. And the 3 of us were brought up on stage, and then the masked magician hypnotized us, and he said to Joe, you will pick your nose and eat it. And you keep doing it. So there was this loop of pick and eat, pick and eat, pick and eat, pick and eat. Then there was me. He told me that I should sing like Ethel Merman, but sing Hello, Dolly. And so there was this loop of Hello, Dolly, and I just kept going and going and going. Then there was Lucy, who was standing right next to me on my right, and the masked magician said, and now you will take off your clothes. So she took off her shirt and her pants, and all she had on was her bra and her underpants. And the masked magician had this like burlesque kind of music, striptease music, playing in the background. And the audience, you know, was a little uncomfortable in spite of the fact that it was quite the spectacle. And then he said, and now you will take off your bra. And she did. And now the audience was even more uncomfortable because they didn't know whose side they should be on. And then she was told to flash with her underpants, and it was becoming really uncomfortable. So I don't know if you're uncomfortable yet, but it gets worse. So now 2 real Chicago police come into the theater, and they come down the aisle, and the masked magician says, that's right, we called you because you need to arrest her for indecent exposure. And the audience begins to defend Lucy, and they take Lucy away. No, do something about it. Andy, we need you now, we need you. Save her. So Andy comes from behind the curtain, and he runs down to the police, and he says, no, she was hypnotized, she's not responsible. And they take her away anyway. So now, that's sort of like a showstopper. So now the audience is so distracted, and they're so concerned about Lucy being arrested against her will, and they say, Andy, do something about it, do something. And anyway, what should I do? Should I call? Should I call the police? And they said, yeah, call them, call. So he gets on the phone, and he calls, and $50 bail, and well, anyway, so the whole con sort of unfolds, and we come to understand and know that Lucy, besides being Andy's friend from Transcendental Meditation and both being vegetarians, that Lucy is also a stripper, and her stage name is Princess Cheyenne, and she has a really thriving following in Boston. So I think those people really got like an emotional bang for their buck. That was quite the happening. Let's see. So, let's see. For your next act, Andy. So Andy loved the family. You know, he really did. There was a part of his act where he would take off, you know, his jacket and sweatshirt and stuff, and then it would say, "I love Grandma," and that was really no hoax. He loved coming back home, especially like for Thanksgiving. He would come back. He would want Mommy to make him breakfast. He would take me to the Macy's Day Parade, and one year after the parade, he said to me, "Before we go home, I would really like to meet a real Rockette." I don't know how we're going to do it, but okay. So we go to the backstage door of Radio City Music Hall, and he knocks on the door. He's wearing this long camel hair coat, and he's wearing this sweatshirt with the hood tied all the way up, tied really tight under his chin, and he's just got a little bit of his face exposed. He actually looks adorable, and he knocks on the door, and this big burly bouncer type opens the door and says, "Oh, what do you want? What do you want?" And I look up at Andy, and he says, "Well, I would like to meet a real Rockette, please." The guy doesn't know what to make of Andy. You know, he's like wondering. So he goes, "Just wait there. Just wait a couple of minutes. I'll be right back." So we're standing there, and I'm looking at Andy, and he's bouncing with excitement, you know. And the door opens again, and there was this beautiful woman. Her hair was poofed. She had a tiara. She had these long eyelashes and makeup and a beautiful sparkly outfit. And she kissed Andy on the cheek, and she said, "I am a real Rockette." And then she closed the door, and Andy was just giddy, bouncing away. Well, that night, we went home, and he had started something called talent show around the dining room table. That meant that everybody that was at that table had to do something, a poem, a song, something. You know, and Grandma Lily sang "Row, row, row your boat," and Michael did La Bamba, but he didn't know any Spanish, so it was gibberish. And I sang Hello Dolly, or Thank Heavens for Little Girls, and Grandma Pearl told a joke about the dog that wanted to become a doctor. And as the years passed, these became our signature pieces. Who knew that Andy would want to take us on the road? So one Thanksgiving, he got a gig up in Kutcher's. Kutcher's is up in the Catskills. It's like the Borscht Belt, and, you know, think Dirty Dancing and Don Rickles and Jackie Mason, Phyllis Diller. Anyway, it's the kind of rapid-fire humor that that audience is used to, one-liners, not Andy's brand. Andy's brand was more like oil and water. So anyway, so we get there, and Andy had told his manager, "I'll only do it if I can invite my family with me." So, you know, they brought us up in limos, they gave us rooms, but that's not what Andy meant. What Andy meant was, "I'll only do it if I could take my family with me up on stage to do our family talent." It was Thanksgiving. So we all went up there, and you know, at first the audience, "Oh, that's so cute," they were applauding for us, "Isn't this darling?" It was a family audience, and I think it would have been fine if it was just one act, maybe just Michael doing La Bamba. But there was La Bamba, and then there was the Row, row, row your boat, and then there was the joke about the dog that wanted to become a doctor, and then there was me singing, and I just think they felt fatigued, dumbfounded, and spoofed. Oh, well. So, you know, as you can tell, the stage was not the only place that Andy performed. He performed the street, the public. I mean, there was so many places that he could, you know, incubate his material and experiment. And Coney Island was one of those places. Coney Island was a place that we all went to once a year. He would fly in from Los Angeles just to go be with the family, another tradition. My father had been brought up in Brooklyn, and he loved Coney Island, so we turned us on to Coney Island as soon as we could, as soon as we were old enough. And each year, well, we would go on all the Cyclone and all the, you know, traditional rides. And it was towards the end of the evening, we were walking down the Midway, and there were all these games. We were passing, you know, the jelly apples and all the different games. And there was one game that didn't have any lines. It was empty. And the attendant was just sitting on this milk crate, and he looked like he had a long face. And Andy went over to the man. He gave him a couple of bucks, and he was handed the mallet. It was the hit the bell strongman game. 3 chances, hit the bell, and you get the big prize. So he went over, and he took that mallet, and he turned to us, and he said, you see that bell? when I'm going to hit that bell right now. This is kid stuff. I could do this with one hand tied behind my back. That's right. Mark my words. I'm going to hit that bell. Mommy, I'm going to win you the big prize. So he was in a character. We were used to that. So he picked up the mallet. He didn't even get it above his head. He got it like around his shoulder, and he hit the thing broadside, and it went up as far as weakling. It measured weakling. He turns around, and now there's a bit of a crowd forming. He looks, he says, I could have done it if I wanted to. I was just kidding around. I'm just getting warmed up. Just watch. I'll do it now. So he lifts the mallet up again. He gets it over his head. He hits it down. It pops up a little bit higher. It measures cream puff. He goes, all right. I'm just kidding. I'm just getting warmed up. I'm getting that prize for you, Mommy. I'm going to do it right now. Just mark my words. Now there's a bigger crowd watching. He takes that mallet. He slams it down on the platform. And it measures halfway up, weenie. So then he says, I could have done it if I wanted to do it, but I didn't want to do it because I would have busted the guy's bell. That's right. I didn't want to break the guy's game. That's right. So he struts away, like a bad guy wrestler. And when we get down the midway a little bit, we turn around and we see that now there's a long line formed for this game. And Andy smiles. It was like a double. It was like a double. He got a long line for this guy, and he got to con the people at the same time. It was the perfect hoax. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol, for sharing those great stories with us. We're going to hope to have a Q&A tonight. We'll see how we do with time. If you have a few minutes left, we'll have a Q&A with everybody. And if we're short on time, then we'll just invite you to stay and talk to folks. But I hope you get a chance to talk to Carol one way or the other. So up next is my colleague here at DePaul, Zach Ostrowski. Zach is associate professor in the Department of Art, Media, and Design, where he's also the area head of graphic art. And Zach is also an incredibly talented artist. As you'll see, his work moves us far beyond any sort of true, false, or real, fake binary. As Beverley Fre, he's a first-rate rapper, an amazing musician. And Beverley Fre is not some put-on. It's obviously not some fake version of Zach. The same thing goes for Mr. Midwest. When he comes to town, you don't get a false version of Zach Ostrowski that's there to use the locals, look down on them, or consume them in the name of art. Instead, you get a true artist who's come to share his crazy, wonderful world with you and collaborate with you to expand that world and extend that wonder, as he often collaborates with his partner, Greg Scott, who's here tonight as well. If you've not yet experienced the spectacle that is being in the presence of Beverley Fre, you need to change that state of affairs immediately. You will, actually, in a few moments. But if I were forced to explain it to you, like someone who's had the privilege of collaborating in some small way with him, the best I could say is this. Imagine that Harmony Korine staged a remake of the movie Willy Wonka. But instead of kids winning a tour of a chocolate factory, Mr. Fresh Wonka comes to your town, chugs fizzy mountain lifting dew, puts pancakes on his face, and invites you to become an Oompa Loompa pork chop by yourself, because you all get golden tickets. One of the things that Zach does so brilliantly is question the concept of culture at a deeply philosophical level. He also makes it clear how life is always a performance precisely by revealing our shared public spaces to be stages. He shows rather than says. And one of the things that he shows us is that life was always already a performance, and the stage was always already set in every direction around us. He just frees us to see this. We can't think that fake is the opposite of real after we encounter Zach's work. We can't see the world as so simple or so boring any longer. It's hard to imagine wanting more from art or an artist. He's the real deal. So I invite all of you to come out tomorrow night to the DePaul Art Museum for the reception of his show that's opening there. But before that, put your hands together for Zach Ostrowski, Mr. Midwest, the one and only Beverley Fre.
All right, thanks, Peter. That was great. You did all the work, now I can just fuck around. I'm part of a crew called the Wild American Dogs, along with the crooner, AKA Greg Scott. My name's Beverley Fre. I was born one day on a cold morning in the rural Midwest. The Midwest is in between. It's misunderstood. "13 years ago, this very day, at this very moment, I sat in a canoe in an obscenely massive body of water, an endless mother, cradling, rocking, tempting, and frightening us all. At that moment, I was nothing. I am nothing. I said we're all nothing. As my puny skeleton insignificantly rocked and rolled and swayed with the sea, I saw the circle of life drifting like a wet funyun. Here, there, here's where I brought myself back. I was there with Jason. Jason brought the snacks. We were on our way to discover we bury loose in his plant. Our heads filled with helium and mescaline. Well, just that night, I had a vision that I was a pile of potato skins. The first layer of myself rested calmly, gently on the ground, while each layer built up, getting more complex, more dense as I reached up high into the atmosphere, the endless, infinite, godless, almighty being reality. And I stared into its faceless face, and I asked, would you help me? Could you help me? Can you and will you help me? Would 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 you help me? I need everybody to help me out. Take out your cellular telephone. Please. Please. Take them out. Everybody whip them out. Put your cell phone up high in the sky so I can see it with my eyes. I want to see proof. I want to see proof of your phones. Put them up, put them up, put them up, put them up. Get them out, put them up. Whip them out, whip them out. You, whip them out. Stop fucking around. Put them up in the air. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Get them up, get them up, get them up. All right, now, go to new contact. Type in this number, 872-222-8493. Once again, 872-222-8493. For the contact name, put "for a good time, call." Save that sucker. You're gonna need it. Got it? All right, something I like to think about is how we perform. Irving Goffman's book, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, is an important text for a lot of people. They like to read it.
And my work often starts with the performance, and then it's forced or transformed into something else. For example, the opening monologue about the floating Funyun was, in its origin, a standalone performance and is now a multimedia art piece. There's an advertisement for this installation in the current window of the DePaul Art Museum. You can see it from the CTA station. That phone number that you all just saved is advertised there. It's linked to a dedicated voicemail system, and the outgoing message will change randomly, and you have the opportunity to interact and respond. So I'm waiting for your call. Did you ever see a pig wrestle? Have you ever seen a pig wrestle? This is another example of how my work begins with performance and then is forced or transformed into something else. So this is a sculpture for my upcoming exhibition, as Peter mentioned, opens tomorrow, called Really Something Else at the DePaul Art Museum. And it started as this reference of man versus animal and the annual ritual of pig wrestling at most county fairs in the rural Midwest. Ooh. Oh. There's a constant sense of restlessness. My research is focused on how meaning is produced and shared. I'm fascinated with how we collectively assign meaning, what we deem worth sharing, and exactly how we do it. What are the devices that we use? I explore these conditions, and my work often transforms them into something new that confuses documentary, autobiography, and fiction. I'm interested in forms of expression that have been used for ages to define and sustain cultural heritage, including jokes, songs, dance, storytelling, and the context. Where are these things exchanged? Formal and informal. So everything from a PowerPoint to bathroom graffiti, they all have their inherent behavior structures. I've wept at a beautiful song or in the presence of a beautiful painting. I haven't yet wept for a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. There's still time. Maybe I can get you all there. There was a guy in my town named Purple Truck Mike. There was a guy in my town named Tie Me Up Sam. There was Fub, Squid, Lazy Laura, Iron Mike, Gangster Wayne, Horse, Spaz, Itchy Ryan, and Ziz. The name Beverley Fre functions as an entry point. It's a nickname setting you up so you know who you're dealing with. I don't think the self is fixed, and I only use the term persona as an entry point into the work. If I had to identify with somebody, it would be the archetype of the trickster, the wanderer, the drifter. The overarching goal of my work is that of mobility, to not limit myself and to be able to perform in a variety of different venues, an identity that's not solely academic nor exclusively street, but able to invade each of these different contexts and have them confront each other. The backbone of my research is a series called The Outskirts. It's a series of impromptu, unauthorized guerrilla performances that are site-oriented or site-specific and occur throughout the rural Midwest.
Put that on a pan, damn, slap that on a plate, cake. Got a belly full of bag, but it really don't matter, she would love me anyway. Hey, I make the pancakes, yeah, cook the pancakes. Why?
took out his shit and he pissed on him.
And he's like, "We see those raisins?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, take those fuckers and line them up, one after another, all the way up and down my crevice." Nah, I'm just kidding.
Yeah! It's a little sample of the outskirts. For more, come to DPAM tomorrow. So early on in this ongoing series, I started out trying to understand Midwestern cultural rituals, which I grew up on, from two very different perspectives. First being as a participant, and the second as an agitator. So as an active participant, taking place in already existing events, I've been in numerous eating competitions. I won a pet and owner lookalike competition, different physical feats of strength and talents, many of which I won. This is an example of one that I did not win. I failed at the potato decorating contest because I brought my own ingredients, which were flaming hot Cheetos, baby corn, and tuna fish, and the judges were two middle school girls. I think his tuna fish is gross. Little rusty, but I'm the rooster crowing king of St. Clair County. I said I'm the gosh dang rooster crowing king of St. Clair County. Not ashamed about it. And the second method, agitation or disruption. So as an example, pretty much every county fair starts off with the VFW Hall pancake breakfast. And this was the first official performance that I did on the Outskirts series tour, disrupting the pancake breakfast and singing a little jazzy ode about pancakes. And the response, as you saw, was not what I expected, but was right on. So over time, the performances have gotten more complex. Some of them are impromptu, some are planned and specific to the location. Others are impromptu, and I kind of bring in collaborators on the spot. This is a more involved work that I did with the Wild American Dogs last year at the annual Magic Festival in Colon, Michigan. Anybody ever been to Colon? There you go. This is a piece called Ode to Hopper and Angel, Dennis Hopper and Chris Angel, AKA 36 Sticks. There's a piece by Dennis Hopper in his career where he was kind of blacklisted from Hollywood. He directed and edited and produced his own experimental film. He screened it in Texas somewhere, Austin or Houston, and basically it was an endurance feat. The people that stayed through the entire film were put on a bus and taken to a local racetrack where he sat in the center of a circle produced by dynamite, and they were detonated all at the same time. And if they go off correctly, you're kind of protected in this bubble from the explosion. If they go off incorrectly, you die instantly. So I thought it would be a good idea to do an ode to Dennis Hopper's trick and add in a couple other variables. So during the annual get-together at 11:20 p.m. on Friday night, August 5th, I paddled a rowboat loaded with 36 sticks of dynamite to the middle of Palmer Lake in Colon, Michigan. My arms were handcuffed to the sides of the boat, and the dynamite was set to auto-detonate in 210 seconds. After a massive earth-shattering blast, I emerged unshackled from the water's depths and swam to shore, where I unveiled a sack containing 13 wallets and watches from the stunned onlookers. Some documentation. So I studied for 7 years with a friend of the family, a rural farmer who was also an explosives expert, and Ricky Dunn, the world's greatest pickpocket, in order to prepare for this event. This is an overview of my kind of overall research strategy. As I mentioned, the Outskirts tour is kind of the backbone of what I do. These are kind of brief, planned, or impromptu performative research. I take all of those experiences and kind of gather them into a one-man show, which is called Mr. Midwe, combining jokes, stories, dance, physical feats. And then the last tier is kind of bringing all of these things together into an immersive museum exhibition environment that extends the participation to the audience. So my last solo show was called A Real Good Time at the Cranbrook Museum of Art, and my current upcoming solo show that opens tomorrow is called Really Something Else. I'll talk a little bit about Real Good Time. In that show, I looked at kind of examining the professional, the innocent, the badass, and the seeker, these specific archetypes that I encountered during my travels in the rural Midwest. Each was kind of embodied and represented by a different stage set. Mr. Midwe the performance was a non-linear exploration of character, space and time, and the structures that govern experience. All this was set within a stylized, fictionalized version of the Midwest that was once recognizable and something completely new. Here's an installation shot. So the form and material were set up to kind of create the archetype, but then also expose it and undermine it. So this was the professional set, which was made by fusing the silhouette of two commercial buildings that I found in the rural Midwest to get this facade, and then the facade is undermined by the material, which is $1,000 worth of synthetic hair. And then the back of the building is exposed, so you know that it's just a facade, there's no actual structure, and behind it is the arm of the badass, a 20-foot long arm with a vagina/flower tattoo that reads Chrissy. And this massive, gigantic arm is actually plush and made out of material that you use to make a mascot. So it appears rigid and solid, but when you touch it, it collapses. So again, setting up the expectation and then undermining it, exposing it. The environment was also used as a rotating stage. So one of the challenges I wanted to set up was to break the boundary between the performer and the audience, so I can kind of continually activated these different sets, so the audience was essentially always part of the piece. And the end of it kind of extended the participation of the audience by giving them various prompts. You can see by the looks on their face, I think they're enjoying it. This place is a fucking madhouse. This is a piece called After Laughter by the Wild American Dogs. Growing up in a small town, the annual carnival was the biggest event of the year, and it was the biggest social gathering, and I was always fascinated by the grand tent and how all these disparate activities happen under one structure. So during the day, there's a bingo tournament, there's country line dancing, there's face painting for kids. Later on, there's fights, there's a beer tent, make-out sessions, breakups, hookups. All of that kind of goes on under one structure. So I hated the idea of an exhibition having fixed meaning, and I wanted to introduce new activities into the space that I created to change the meaning and use the environment in a different way. So this is a laughter yoga therapy session held by Lynn West, who's a master yogi, laughter yogi. The Wild American Dogs also created a piece called Language is a House, and it was presented and advertised to local real estate agents, and it was billed as an inspirational keynote presentation from a renowned local real estate agent, and he was going to talk about how he reinvented himself. So it started out as a very straight-laced, inspirational TED Talk kind of thing, and then it kind of wavered the line between nightmare and the everyday, and we got into things like this, and and this. I'll show a couple quick slides from my last solo show in Berlin at the Pavilion am Milchhof in 2014. This was a freestanding pavilion, and I was really interested about, this was actually the first time I got to exhibit any of the work around the Midwest. Nobody actually in the Midwest wanted to show it at first, so the Germans loved it, so I went there. And I really like this space because it's glass and it's inside of a courtyard, so the idea is that the gallery's open 24 hours, and there's a big nightlife in that area, so I really like the idea of this being kind of this roadside oddity, a backroads bar, roadside attraction that you would kind of find wandering around at night. And I wanted to show some of this work to talk about developing, cultivating, trying to pin down and also confuse the idea of a Midwestern aesthetic. This is a detail of one of the vinyl prints that are on the wall. It's a digital collage of all found source images that I collected during the Outskirts series and photographs that I've taken, and kind of remixing them, putting them together to kind of create new relationships. And I'm very interested in the notion of restless desperation. The sense that I felt growing up in the Midwest, in the rural Midwest, and this feeling that I feel still kind of hovers over the area, where you have this burning passion inside, but there's no outlets, there's no role models, there's no structure, and there's no way to kind of understand how to express these things. So these kind of cultural codes and cues get misunderstood and construed into new exciting ways. So that's what I'm trying to attempt to do through some of this digital collage, which expands out into sculpture, taking some of these found images and making them physical, creating new meanings through proximity. And I'll touch on a couple current and in progress works. I don't want to show too much work from the upcoming exhibition tomorrow, because I want you to go to see it with your own eyes. Just, I'll give you a little, just a little bit, just a little taste, just a little something, a little taste on your wet, little test, or just a little bit down on the test to wet the whistle a little bit. This is the Outskirts archive that you'll encounter when you first walk into the exhibition. It's a series of ephemera and things that I've collected along the tour. From the Colon Magic Festival, there's something from the UFO Festival in Dundee, Michigan, the series of mugs from the Boy Scout Museum in Ottawa, Illinois. A lot of good things happening there. A turkey made out of seashells, a replica tongue from Chutz, who lost his tongue biting into a hot fish sandwich down at the Stop and See in Montgomery, Indiana. So this kind of casual collecting of materials over time evolved into something a little bit more proper with the recently established Archive of Midwestern Culture, which I founded alongside with Greg Scott. And we're attempting to kind of make this collecting a little bit more systematic and have it available to the public. So look out for that. You can go to the archiveofmidwesternculture.com to check out more of what we're up to. With really something else, the upcoming solo exhibition at DPAM, I'm interested in extending performance to the audience. So there's multiple interactive pieces. This one's called Real Deep Inside. It's an interactive talk show. So you get to sit down in a chair and you're both the host and the participant of an evening talk show, respond to prompts that scroll across on an LED screen, and there's a surveillance camera, and I get an alert on my phone whenever anybody sits down, and the crooner and I are able to interact with you live and record the exchange. And May 30th, mark it in your calendars, the Wild American Dogs Big Time Tent Revival in Chicago. One night only, Songs, stories, jokes, cries, grunts, groans, moans, squeals, hollers, and the call and response show. Let you air out your lungs real good. So pick your purse and watch your wallet, because Beverley Fre and the Wild American Dogs are really something else. That's 5:30 to 6:30 p.m., the DePaul Art Museum. Everybody say yeah. Yeah. Say yeah. Yeah. Say hell yeah. Yeah. Say hell yeah. Yeah. Say yes. Say oh yes. Say so much go yeah. So yeah.
Now you see what I'm talking about, right? Got to be there tomorrow, got to be there on May 30th as well. Thank you so much, Zach. That was awesome. That was awesome. All right, so as a palate cleanser before our final speaker, it's now my pleasure to introduce you to another brilliant musical talent. Luciano Pavarotti was born in 1935 in northern Italy, the son of a baker and a cigar factory worker. Abandoning his childhood goal of playing soccer professionally, a teenage Pavarotti eventually took vocal lessons and discovered his talent at singing. Deeply influenced by Enrico Caruso and Mario Lanza, his talent and his voice grew quickly. Though, to please his parents, he taught elementary school and sold insurance on the side, just in case he wasn't able to make it in the world of opera. Pavarotti never in his life learned how to read music, but he eventually moved from the small regional opera houses in the metropolitan area to the Metropolitan Opera, in New York City. I remember watching him multiple times on Johnny Carson when I was a kid. And by the time he performed on Saturday Night Live, he was a crossover international superstar, one of the 3 tenors, and secured his place in history. What a thrill it is for me to be able to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage the incredibly talented Mr. Luciano Pavarotti. Maestro, maestro. Lovely, lovely. And I also should mention that Luciano will be selling his new CD of greatest hits of 2018 out in the foyer tonight. Be sure to look for him. We also have the great Alan Abel, who's our next speaker, his books and his DVD that actually is for sale out there. All right, so I am tempted to say that our final guest of the evening needs no introduction and then just walk off the stage. But the great Alan Abel deserves more than that. I hope that you all got a chance to check out the Alan Abel pop-up museum outside in the lounge. It's going to be up for a little while after we finish here today tonight. So take some time then, if you haven't already, to peruse the memorabilia and the documentary that's playing out there, or purchase one of Alan's books. Alan Abel is a lot of things: a writer, actor, comedian, filmmaker, musician. Indeed, Sir Alan could challenge the recently knighted Ringo Starr to a drum-off any day of the week. He's a lecturer and educator as well, having taught at the New School and all around the English-speaking world. For all of his accomplishments, though, I think of Alan first and foremost as a prankster and a hoaxer, the greatest of the 20th century, even. In the 1950s and 60s, along with his wife Gina and friend Buck Henry, Alan began protesting the fact that naked animals were all around us. "A nude horse is a rude horse" was the slogan for the Society for Indecency to Naked Animals. They even picketed the Kennedy White House. The hoax, meant in part to draw attention to some of the absurdities and the censorship controversies of the day, was taken to be real by millions of people until it was finally exposed as a prank in 1963 by Time magazine. Alan then turned to his next project, running the presidential campaign for Yetta Bronstein from 1964 to 68. Yetta, a Jewish grandmother from the Bronx, campaigned on the slogan, "Vote for Yetta, things'll get better." And she promised to take members of Congress off salary and put them on straight commission based on accomplishments. In all seriousness, Yetta is probably the only person for whom I would actually go out and vote in this corrupt system. And also, in all seriousness, it turned out that, of course, Yetta didn't really exist. In the years that followed, Alan went on to sue the IRS, demanding to see their books and all canceled checks, to convince the media that he was Howard Hughes in bandages and a wheelchair, to get the New York Times to print his fake obituary, and even have a fake official call several plays during the 1983 Super Bowl before he was taken off the field by a fake cop. I first became aware directly of Alan in 1985, when he orchestrated a now classic stunt on live TV during the Phil Donahue Show. He had various members of the audience pretend to faint the moment that they were called on to ask a question of the guests. It was a brilliant bit of art, with plants all around the audience seated in different places, all taking part. I had been in college for just a few months when this happened, and when it came out that it was all a hoax, I decided to dig up everything I could find on this man, learning all about his past pranks, and I swore to keep following everything that he would do thereafter. In the years to come, he had lottery hoaxes, euthanasia cruises for the elderly, the Concerned Citizens Against Breastfeeding, and a campaign to label binocular bird watchers as perverted voyeurs. We had, that is, a series of continuing cons that were meant to shock us, make us laugh, and make us awake. Alan himself has said that much of his work has been meant as satire, as a call to get us to think about the absurdities of everyday life. The Donahue Fainting Con was actually done under the acronym of FAINT, Fight Against Idiotic Neurotic Television. And when Alan tried to sell cases of Jenny McCarthy's urine after she appeared in this ridiculous ad campaign for shoes, he did so under the pseudonym of Stoidi Pukehaw, and no one noticed until he pointed it out that the name backwards is Wake Up Idiots. Which is all to say that I think of Alan as a true artist, one of the greatest of the 20th century. His medium is not a canvas, clay, or marble. His medium is our media. He plays the media like a virtuoso. He gets reporters, magazines, newspapers, television to jump at his command. And the choreography he creates not only delights us, but points to some deep truths about the absurd state of affairs we take to be everyday life. Nearly 3 centuries ago, Jonathan Swift suggested a modest proposal for ending Irish poverty. Sell Irish children to rich Englishmen to be eaten. The essay has become part of the canon of satire, but for my money, Alan Abel is even better. Alan, I have no doubt, would have had a press conference where he actually would have served up food indistinguishable from human baby parts. And the fact that our culture would have choked everything Alan said down says everything that we need to know. Please join me in welcoming to the stage our final speaker of the evening, the master of media, the incomparable Sir Alan Abel.
Can you all hear me in the back? You can't hear me?
We can.
Then how do you know what I said? Thank you very much, Peter. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I know I've had a long career in creating hoaxes, and this is a wonderful platform to bring a few of them up and acquaint your students, your followers, your fans, and also others around who are involved in wanting to be hoaxers. It's possible because I was born in a very small town, Zanesville, Ohio, which home of Zane Grey, the author, and about 8 miles down the road from Clark Gable, Cadiz, Ohio. And I was about 6 years old when I'd stand with my friends by the Y Bridge over the Ohio River near my dad's store, and when motorists would come through on Route 40, coast to coast, they'd stop us, ask us 6- and 7-year-olds, how do I get to Route 40? We'd say, go up to the middle of the river and turn left. So that was what they had to do, go up to the middle of the Ohio River and turn left on the only Y bridge in the world and continue their journey. Well, it was fun to provoke it with my friends. And after Zanesville, we moved to Coshocton, Ohio, a small town, about 8,000. Every time somebody was born, somebody would leave town. And the mayor explained that was the reason the population never changed. Also, Sheriff Buster Bigrig, quite a colorful carrier, and a character also. And a carrier, I say, he drove around in a 1935 Ford convertible. And he was sheriff for a while, and when a nude woman was found floating down the Walhunting River, Sheriff Bigrid said, well, she can't be around here because her toenails are painted. So he dismissed her as being from a big city girl. And we had fun in town. We had music, we had parades, and I played the drums then and enjoyed it with the Salvation Army Band, and became quite prolific on the instrument because I wanted to leave town. I wanted to get out of Coshocton and come into New York. And one of my goals was to play with the Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall. Let me rephrase that. I wanted to play for the Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall. So when I came to New York in the early 50s, I knocked on the stage door, and Raymond Page, the conductor, came to the door and said yes. And I said, I saw the show a couple of times. I can do much better drumming than Billy Gladstone, your present drummer. And he said, well, we have 18 substitutes on a list. We don't need any more. And I said, oh, I've dreamed of doing the show at Radio City Music Hall and playing with that 55-member orchestra back in the early 50s. So to make a longer story short, I decided, all right, I'll show them. I bought 100 postcards, and every day I sent a postcard to Raymond Page, the conductor of Radio City Music Hall, and said, I'm available, only 10 minutes away by taxi. Well, by postcard number 82, he could have killed me if I came by, so I avoided walking anywhere near the Radio City. But then, postcard number 83 arrived the morning that Billy Gladstone called in ill and had to go to the hospital. And that's when Page, in a moment of anger, getting one of my postcards, called me and said, come down through gritted teeth and play the first show, because they did 4 a day. I went down and I sailed right through it like a sight read, and I'd seen the show several times. So he said, okay, you're on. And Billy was out for about 6 months, and that's the way I became the regular substitute at Radio City and also the Roxy Theater and Lou Walters' club that he had in New York City. And it was really quite a nice experience to know that just by being disobedient, so to speak. In fact, MIT nominated me for the Disobedient Award this year again, as they did last year, because I lectured up there. But I lost, and then maybe I'll win this year. There's $250,000 prize for being disobedient. Oh, yeah. And there's still time to enter if any of you out here want to try your luck at that. But this is a grand honor and a great experience, thanks to Peter Steeves. I don't know where he came out of the woodwork, so to speak. Do you have your green card, Peter? Did you get your green card? He's not answering that. It's fun to pull people's legs, isn't it? And I've had my feet in people's mouths at different times. Yes, for various reasons. I remember when I first moved to New York, I looked at the Musicians Local 802 and the bulletin board, and there's a room for rent with Jerry Arlen, and it said only $60 a month. And I went up and looked at it and met Jerry. He said, yeah, come on, move in. You got a place to live. He said, oh, my brother was going to come by here, and when he comes, have him stay, because I have to go to a recording session for a couple hours. I said, okay. So I waited, and there's a knock on the door, and here's a guy, and this is back in 1950, 51. He has a wide-brimmed hat, because everybody wore hats. And he looks shallow, and he looks sad, and very much the introvert. I had him come in and sit down, and I tried to draw him into conversation. No, he didn't have much to say. I said, what do you do, Harold? And he said, oh, I'm a songwriter. I said, well, have you written anything I might have heard on the radio? And, and he said, well, Over the Rainbow, and I've Got the World on a String, and Blues in the Night, That Old Black Magic. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is Harold Arlen. Why didn't I know? How could I be so foolish? But we all make these little mistakes occasionally. And I have to laugh to think that he enjoyed the fact that he's putting me on, can you earn a living with Over the Rainbow and That Old Black Magic? Come on. Guy was a multimillionaire, for heaven's sake. Do we have any questions as we go here at this point? I see a rather serious group of people that you all are. And you may have a question about something that's bothering you all your life. And I can answer these questions because I create situations to solve problems. For example, when I fly to the West Coast occasionally for a television show, they say, we can't upgrade you. I said, well, just give me a rear window seat, okay? Because it's an off-peak flight, it's not that crowded. Once I get the rear window seat, I go into my pocket for my props, and the first thing I do is I take a string and put it in my mouth. Now, the passenger assigned to my other two seats in the rear window area see a stranger with a string in his mouth that discourages friendship. And they wait till they get up to 30,000 feet, and then they usually change their seats. Not all of them. There's some hardcore sitters. And for them, I say, when we get to 30,000, excuse me, I can't take the air pressure on my nose. And I go in with this little thing here, and I think you all can recognize it from the distance. Now, I'm in the rear one window seat and three seats, sitting by the window, and the passengers next to me are waiting until we get to 30,000 feet, and then they will change their seats. But nobody, and it's off-peak, nobody's going to sit next to me. Would you sit next to me looking like this? I don't think so. It'd be very embarrassing. And the hardest thing is to keep from laughing, because that really is what I think, is life best, as we all know. And laughter is the only, shall we say, kind of element in your system that releases endorphins and is healthy for your body. Laughter, no, not sadness, not crying, but laughter. And that's what we have to do. But I know we're here to talk about hoaxes, and my first hoax happened when I was driving in the car to Women's College down in Denton, Texas, and suddenly, there on the highway, a cow and bull were having sex. Now, traffic in both ways is stopped, and the cow and bull continue with their activity because the whole world is their bedroom. I mean, they don't have to decide where to have sex. They do it on the highway. And I noticed the reactions of people watching these two animals totally unaware of the ramifications of what they were doing. And besides that, I saw a cow and a bull that were naked. Ah, yeah, there we go. Now I have the idea to make up a phony story, a hoax, about a group that wants to clothe all naked animals for the sake of decency. Namely, horses, cows, dogs, cats, any animal that stands higher than 4 inches and longer than 6 inches. In fact, a nude horse is a rude horse. That became the battle cry. I wrote out the story about Cinna, sent it to the Saturday Evening Post. I was staying at the Mickey Mantle Hotel in Missouri at the time for a week, giving lectures and assembly programs for an agency in Dallas, Texas. And a week later, I get the letter back from the Saturday Evening Post with a notation on it. This is a deplorable campaign to clothe naked animals. And I realized that the editor had taken it very seriously. Aha, I've got a tiger by the tail. So there at Mickey Mantle's Motel in Missouri, I look up a local printer who sold leaflets about 2 by 5 inches, $3 a pound. And this is back in the early 50s, keep that in mind. So he printed up 3 pounds of leaflets, and I started leaving them in waste baskets and all over in the Bible First Leaf and motel rooms. And pretty soon, and then I sent, of course, the idea of clothing all naked animals to Dave Garroway, who was on the Today Show at that time. And Dave's people reacted. In fact, they called up and said, could we get a group to come to this show, the Garroway show in the morning, which has an audience of a few million. G. Clifford Prout was president, the name I made up, and my friend Buck Henry agreed to wear that mantle and pretend that he wanted to clothe all naked horses for the sake of decency. Well, Buck was available. He was an unemployed actor at that time. This is, of course, in the early 50s, and Buck got on the Today Show, and with no time at all, he was suddenly the talk of the whole industry, not only on television and radio, but newspapers. And my wife and doorman, when we went down to Washington and picketed the White House and asked Carolyn Kennedy to clothe Macaroni, Carolyn's horse, John Kennedy was laughing with opera glasses up in the White House, and of course, Carolyn was very, very upset, and her mother too. They didn't like this idea that people want to put clothing on pets. Oh, how can you be so indecent? But we decided we should go with this tiger by his tail, and Cinna was the first big hoax that took off. And it just couldn't stop. In fact, from the mid-50s up until 1963, when my friend Buck Henry was cornered as G. Clifford Prout, and Time magazine did the expose on April 21st, 1963, with Walter Cronkite, father of the news, explaining the hoax. But those tapes with the particular CBS news program have all been wiped. CBS stores its tapes in New Jersey. I had a friend from an ad agency go over to find the tape with Walter and G. Clifford Prout, alias Buck Henry. No, it's gone, blank tape. And the same with other CBS outlets all over the country. Walter was so embarrassed because here is this guy, G. Clifford Prout, playing the ukulele, and singing the Senate marching song, to clothe all animals for the sake of decency, and that a nude horse was a rude horse. Well, that fueled my desire to create fake news and see what happened. Why not? And I did with that. That was the first one. And of course, then the topless string quartet was just an idea that I had for 4 young ladies, topless, playing 2 violins, viola, and cello. And Life magazine picked it up and did a photo, and Frank Sinatra wanted to record them on his record company. And this was also way back in the early 50s when I began to get fuel to doing fake news as fact. And I started that whole campaign, many. Sonia Friedman was a popular talk host in Los Angeles, and she interviewed me as Omar the Baker, with a hood over my head, from California, and I'm in New York, and I'm having my lunch while she interviews me. And she's so annoyed by that. She's never, ever interviewed anybody who has their lunch while they're being interviewed. The hardest thing is keeping a straight face. And it's really difficult because I almost, well, I do have a bloody lip sometimes, because when I had euthanasia cruises after Dr. Kevorkian, and he went to jail, I announced that you could sign up for this euthanasia cruise, and it was a 3-day trip to Davy Jones's locker. You could have all you could eat, and you could dance and sing, and at the end of 3 days in international waters, you went down to Davy Jones's locker. And Beth, this reporter from New York One, which is a news channel all day and night, she wanted to write up the story about the euthanasia cruise line. And I explained to her on the phone, I said, but we only sell one-way tickets, you know. Well, she said, maybe you'll change your mind. Let's meet at Morton's Steakhouse in New York on 45th and 5th, and we'll discuss it. So she's there with a sound man and a cameraman, and Zev, my friend, the actor, who was actually a clown professionally, but he's wonderful at dropping tears on command. He was about 30 years old and looks like he's maybe 50, white bald. And he pulled off this wonderful, wonderful dialogue about he wants to leave everything behind to the Salvation Army, his dog, his cat, his horse, his house in Atlanta, Georgia, and say goodbye to the world. He has nothing left to live for. And Beth is interviewing him in Morton's Steakhouse in New York on 45th and 5th. The cameraman is starting to cry. The sound man is crying. Beth is crying. Zev is crying. And I'm sitting there with a bloody lip. I don't want to break the character. But if I do, it's all over. You know, it'll never play. Well, I held character, had the bloody lip, and the story ran on New York News 1. But not before we had an E.F. Hudson moment when everybody's quiet. You know, what's the latest stock trade? Wow. They had to tune in on that and find out what was going to happen. But Beth wanted to go, and I said, Beth, we only sell one-way trips. You're not coming back. And she said, well, then I'm not going to go. That's okay. You know, IRS, they examined my books and records for a whole day and found out I owed the government $32. And finally, the 2 examiners who had suspenders and looked like accountants, they didn't look like agents, IRS agents, but they said, oh, you owe $32 and forget it, it's not worth filing the paperwork. So I thought, that's not very nice, spent all day with them, so I'll file suit against the United States government and ask them to bring all their books and records to my house. It would have taken 12 train car loads just for the Pentagon alone. And the government fought it tooth and nail with the Couder brothers, a very expensive law firm in New York, where they called me in for an EBT examination before trial. And they wanted to know, what's my angle? You know, why am I suing the government and asking them to bring all their records to my house for a change? And I played it straight. I said, well, it's a citizen's right to peek and find out what IRS is doing with the money, right? And they said, well, yeah, no. So my lawyer from Los Angeles, Roger John Diamond, filed the lawsuit, and it was dismissed and denied by the lower court as being of frivolous nature, of course. But not before I got great respect from the IRS. When I was called in for another audit the following years, they were on the steps in New York. They're waiting for me with coffee and a donut and said, "Go back, it's a mistake. We don't want to see you today." And I have to laugh, to kind of use what essentially is the power of the pulse, or the hoax, which is what we're talking about tonight especially. We had a movie my wife and I made called "Is There Sex After Death?" It's still out and around. It's a comedy. It's not serious. If you get aroused, you would need therapy right away. And this movie opened and played at the Cinema Rendezvous in New York City in 1972, 71, and became quite popular. Before it opened, I had paid people to stand in line for 4 hours during the day at the box office. And on 57th Street in New York, you saw 40 people in line. You figured, oh, it must be a hit movie. We hadn't even opened yet. Well, look what's happening to the former director of the FBI in his book. It hasn't even been published, and he's #1 on the hit parade. So strange things can happen that way. And I do like to create fake news as fact, and I've been doing it for the last probably 75 years. And I keep going and keep going and keep going, and I'm just not going to stop because I have fun with it. I make a point, nothing criminal, nothing physical, and there is an underlying theme, some sort of message. And I always have something in there. SINA, Society for Indecent Naked Animals, protest against censorship. If we're going to censor animals, then what about all this salacious material that we see in books and records and films? There's a whole world of stuff out there we'll start censoring, and then we're going to have a real problem in our country, and we'll be the divided states of America. I won't comment on that. But Howard Hughes was always a friend and a kind of, when I say friend, I didn't know him personally, but I followed his career, and he bought a hotel in Las Vegas, and then said he was going to go back into movie making. Now, Howard Hughes owns a hotel in Las Vegas. He's in the Bayshore Inn in Vancouver with his team, his staff on the entire top floor of the Bayshore Inn, 2 heavy-set private guards in the elevator with keys that only open the top floor to Howard Hughes. I was on the 9th floor of the floor below, and I had a script, and I read Howard Hughes is going to go back into movie making, so why don't he just read my script? And I put it on a string, and his balcony was there, and I had a balcony below his, so I threw my script up on his balcony with a note, "I'll wear gloves, Howard, let's have lunch tomorrow." Nothing. The next morning, the string was dangling, the script was gone. And Howard was up there. I could hear partying and old movies being played on projectors and so on. But the string was just hanging loose, and I tried another mission of sending another message. "I'll wear gloves. Can we meet downstairs for lunch?" Nothing. Well, okay, that's okay. I gave a lecture at the University of British Columbia, and they had given me this room underneath Howard Hughes because I came in late and it was the only suite that was left. Now I'm back in New York, and I said, I'll be Howard Hughes and I'll smoke him out. So with my merry pranksters and cohorts, we put together a team, and we had the Regis Hotel in New York and a friend in South Africa who sent telexes in those days. We're talking about the early 70s, okay, 1970s, 71. And he said that Howard Hughes would be at the St. Regis Hotel for 1 hour. Well, that created real pandemonium because the State Department, they don't like that. They didn't like that at all. I mean, they want to know, who is this guy engineering Howard Hughes coming? And there I was, wrapped in bandages in a 2-room suite, and my friends and cohorts and merry pranksters guarding me. And I claimed through the news conference of about 100 reporters who showed up, and we took them through the metal detector, of course, and make it look real. They had to show their ID. And I pretended that I was Howard Hughes. Well, it didn't quite work because among the 100 more reporters, there was one elderly man who knew Hughes personally and had been with him in Las Vegas and at the Bayshore Inn in Vancouver, and he peppered me. I was now frozen through cryogenics, as I said, and I'm going to come back when the stock market is higher. And he peppered me with questions, and it became a little frantic, and I finally told my guards and cohorts, let's get out of here, because the hour was up anyhow, and we had over 150 reporters begging for answers, shooting questions. Wow. We got down St. Regis and the revolving doors, and as we rushed to get in, Ann Landers got stuck in part of the revolving door, as I did, and I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me, and a whole muss of reporters are stuck in the folds of that revolving door, and it won't move. It's stuck. And they're all trying to get out so they can follow Howard wherever he's going, because I'm still wrapped in bandages. Now, what a great photo that was, because here is Howard Hughes, you know, trying to get out of the St. Regis Hotel, and the media is there, about 100 of them, and they want to know more about what's happening with him, with life, with movies, with the hotel, and so forth. So it didn't happen. The door had to be dismantled. As Ann Landers and I looked at each other for about 20 minutes until the engineer got the door off. And then I got into a limousine that was waiting for me, and he flew me, or drove me actually, pardon me, to the, they had a port of departure for small planes on the east side of Manhattan. And I had chartered that small plane, go over to Newark Airport, take a limousine back into New York. So I was followed by all these reporters. I got in the little biplane and unwrapped my bandages as Howard Hughes, and the pilot was looking back through his rearview mirror, looking, wondering, what is going on? What's going on? He had no clue what's going on. But that night, when he read the newspapers and listened to radio and television, Howard Hughes was all over the place. And the question was, who was that masked man? We don't believe it was really Howard Hughes. So I enjoyed this concept of creating fake news as printed as fact. And I've been doing it for over 75, almost 80 years. It's fun. It's fun. And I don't want to physically hurt anyone or do anything that's against the law. I did have a fake official in the Rose Bowl game between the Dolphins and the Miami Dolphins and Washington Redskins back in 1983. And Frank Mergallo, one of my cohorts, he was there and called 4 plays before Jerry Markwright, the referee, stopped the game. And if you were watching, all you saw was the dirigible overhead, because they were trying to get this guy off the field. He was dressed in a back judge uniform, and he carried a football, and he was running down the sidelines, and Ray Williams, my friend who did this little deed, was chased by a big, heavy-set policeman, Frank Mergallo, who's been my friend and compatriot for many years, along with Paul Hyatt, who's also here tonight. And I should mention Paul quickly while I'm on this strictly trail, because we're talking about hoaxes. Paul created one of the greatest hoaxes ever when he advertised a lung or a kidney for sale, $25,000. Well, it was flooded with requests. This ad appeared on the back page of the Village Voice, which was a popular newspaper back in the, I guess you'd say about late 50s sometime. And Paul captured an audience in Grand Central Station of 150 reporters, because it's illegal to sell an organ. And that law was passed years ago by Al Gore in Congress. You know, Al Gore was almost president in the year 2000, almost. And so it was a historic event that somebody is going to sell a lung or a kidney, because it's illegal to sell an organ. The doctors get paid, the airplane flies the organ, the hospital gets paid, the hospital gets paid. Everybody gets paid except the poor donor. That's not fair, not right, but that's the way it works. So I told Paul, then, you're doing something illegal, why don't you lease the organ for 99 years so you can get around the sale of the organ? So he added that to his reservoir. Paul, pick it up from there. What happened?
It just went on too long, way too long. It just started building up
Hoax honcho Abel strikes again. And he was right, and Alan admitted it was hoax, and that was that. But he didn't get arrested.
Well, Paul's been with me for many, many years. I met him at the new school when I was teaching a comedy course there, and he had gotten the wrong course somehow in a mix-up and ended up in one of mine teaching comedy and stayed with me, became good friends for a number of years, and a very important part of the fabric of creating fake news as real. And he continues to do that too. He's very good at what he does. He can improvise, and he can be with Omar the Beggar, or he can be with any number of people, such as Phil Donahue when I established FAINT, or Fight Against Idiotic Neurotic Television. And as Phil held out the microphone in his audience the first time he came to New York from Chicago, the person fainted or pretended to. And Paul was one of those who went down, and soon the whole audience fell down. Or not all of them, of course, lots of them, but they weren't even with us. But, you know, it's contagious. Like in school, one kid gets sick, they all get sick. And Paul was the first to go down when Phil came to New York with 8 senior citizens who were gay. And on his first weekend doing live shows, these 8 gay senior citizens were coming out of the closet and appearing on camera for live interviews. And Phil was very proud of that, and he took all of his staff from Chicago to New York, except the men. They stayed behind. He just took women. And the guys were quite upset, and one of them sent me 12 tickets to the first week of the show when Phil's going to talk about gay senior citizens, and said, why don't you welcome them? You know, like welcome wagon, do something. So that's when I thought up the idea of FAINT, Fight Against Idiotic Neurotic Television. And Paul was the first one to faint when Phil held out the microphone. And soon others in the audience were dropping who weren't with us. But when Phil brought the mic to them, they began to go down. Phil cleared the audience from the studio. There were 400 people in there. It was on the network of NBC. And it made headlines that night in all the news media. Audience flees Donahue show. Oh, dear. Well, you know, when Phil got back to the office, his executive producer knew who I was and figured I was behind it. And Phil was so angry he was kicking the furniture in his office. He really, really hated that. And I don't think he ever did get over it. You know, it's just a little bit too much to greet somebody that way. Well, look, I did it with fun in mind. The people who fainted on the live broadcast with NBC, they got up right away. They didn't stay down. They didn't have to bring in the medical corps or anything like that. So we take precautions and make sure that we don't overload and dig too deeply in what we're doing. I think that the KKK Symphony is another favorite hoax of mine. When David Duke said he was going to run for governor, it was either Mississippi or Louisiana, you know, the idea of Duke, who's a member of the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan, what in the devil are we doing in this country? So that's when I set up the Ku Klux Klan Symphony and asked David Duke to be guest conductor for the children's concert. One of his representatives said, oh, we'd be happy to know where the KKK Symphony now. I said, well, they're in Australia. You know, they're touring. All right. So then I inquired with Wolf Trap if they would have an open date for the KKK Symphony, and they said, absolutely not. The same with Carnegie Hall. Well, you don't have any open dates. No Wolf Trap, no Carnegie Hall. And we were blockaded. Showtime wanted to do a video of the KKK Symphony, but that was not going to materialize. And also I was getting angry mail from musicians who said, if that orchestra ever plays in my town, I'm going to have a bomb and I'm going to plant it under the conductor's podium. Ooh, we don't need that kind of noise. No, nothing physical. Remember, I'm creating hoaxes. We don't want anything physical, nothing dangerous. We're doing it in a sense that we're having fun and we're making a subliminal message or commentary of some sort. And you have to do it that way. Otherwise, you're going to be in deep trouble. when we had Ray Williams running down the sidelines during the Super Bowl game between the Washington Redskins and the Miami Dolphins, he was chased by this heavy-set policeman, Frank McGallo, one of our cohorts, in a policeman's uniform, and the 800 cops in the stadium out there in Pasadena figured one of our own trying to catch this interloper, so let him do it. But in fact, Frank just caught up with Ray Williams because Ray, to backtrack a bit, had been a bicycle messenger in New York, and he told me once as a single father he would never play in the Super Bowl. And I said, oh, yes, you will. You're going to do it when we have an opportunity, and that's what we did. We had him go in there for that one stunt that worked out very nicely because Ray was caught by Frank McGallo, and they're all on our team, went through the tunnel, and we met for dinner at the Sheraton Hotel and had a lot of laughs because Jerry Markwright was going out of his mind. He was the referee in Pasadena at that Super Bowl, and he was forced to stop the game, and all you saw on camera, on TV, was the overhead blimp. That's all they could stay on until the cop, the heavy-set cop, could catch up with Ray Williams, which he did, and took him to the tunnel, and then we all went to dinner, as I said. So we have fun with these things. I had my obituary in the New York Times, which is quite a nice move to make. I got 8 inches of space, 2 inches more than the guy who invented the six-pack and died the same day. And he didn't come back. I did a few days later, and the reports of my demise were grossly exaggerated according to Mark Twain, as he said when he came back. And I explained before a very large news conference that I did it because I was in an elevator at Universal Studios going up, ready to meet my lawyer, Roger Diamond, and discuss my life story as a feature film. And the lawyers were talking and said, oh, let's not debate this issue. Let's wait till the guy Abel, he's up there in years, so he'll pass on. We can negotiate with his estate and get it much cheaper. 1950, I decided to terminate my life and see how cheap I could be for these lawyers. When I went up in the elevator, they were in the elevator too, and they said, we're not going to have negotiations today. Roger Diamond, his lawyer, has canceled, and we might as well cancel any discussion until he passes on. Well, I didn't pass on. I went and put a fake obit in the New York Times first, and then I held a news conference attended by several hundred reporters who wanted to know why I staged this. Because 3 days later, I came back alive, and they had to cancel everything. And even a book I was going to get published, I lost a lot on that. The publisher said, no, we don't want somebody who's doing fake news right now. I've done it pretty much all my life, and there are dangers to it. Yes, you will offend people. I've had one young lady at a talk show out in Long Island. She came up to me with tears in her eyes and said, my boyfriend lost his job because he wrote a story about you, and it wasn't true. You made it up and printed it as fact instead of fiction. Don't you feel sorry about that? Oh, well, I did. I felt sorry about her boyfriend. But I said, did he get another job? She said, well, yes, but I said, okay, that's it. You do face these hazards occasionally. I've had threats on my life. Oh, sure, the cops in New York had to take me home one night after the Les Crane show, had me on debating various subjects, and I got a threat on my life, and 2 policemen drove me home in the police car because they said, we take those threats seriously. But there are people out there who are very angry, and they don't like what you're doing. And I have my host of enemies, but I cope with them. I get a phone call from Martha Murray's School for Dancing. They offered me free dancing lessons. And I said, well, I only have one leg. And they said, oh, we're so sorry. I said, well, how about pole dancing? And, well, no, sorry. They apologized over that. But we get a lot of calls, as you all do. The robots are calling. And if anybody calls our house nowadays, I just answer with, hello, parlez-vous français, comment allez-vous? And they hang up because the robot doesn't want to talk to somebody who's French. And it's good for evading panhandlers in New York. And city one day on the street on Broadway, someone, panhandler came up to me and he said, money, money. I said, je ne sais pas, parlez-vous français? And he answered me in fluent French, bonjour, monsieur, comment allez-vous? And I gave him $1. Of course, I had to. So sometimes you never know. You get your foot in your mouth. You're at the wrong place at the wrong time. But for one time in my life, really, I must say, right here in this theater, thanks to that gentleman sitting down here, I don't know, I didn't ask, did he get his green card or is he part of DACA? I'm not sure. But Steve has done it. He's done it all, and he does it so well. If you saw his 1-hour discussion of Shakespearean plays, I thought as the most magnificent performance and research and delivery and everything that you could ask for. And he did it that way for an hour. And I told him, I said, you're raising the bar too high, Steve. You're making it difficult for all of us struggling on the lower bar to get up to your height, and we'll never make it. We'll never make it. So stop it, you know? And no, he's going to keep going on, up higher and higher and higher. Well, I think the brain transplant was one of the fun hoaxes I had when I appeared at a UFO convention in New York City at a hotel ballroom with 400 UFO followers. And the head of the organization lived in New Jersey, in Livingston. He was a friend of mine, and he was, okay, let's do a joke on this 400 UFO followers, because, you know, they'll believe just about anything. I said, well, I'm going to believe that I have a brain transplant. I'll have this nurse friend of mine, and I'll appear with bandages, blood-stained, and claim that she was on a motorcycle accident, and I got her brain because my brain had been damaged. And here I am, blood-stained, bandages, before 400 UFO believers, and my friend from Livingston, New Jersey, who's hosting this UFO convention. And question and answer period, the first question people said was, well, what is it like when you have the brain of an 18-year-old young lady? And I said, well, every month I have a nosebleed, but other than that, you know, it's not terrible. I mean, I live with it. And I have a new brain because I needed one. And what is it like? They wanted to know. And I fielded questions for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then finally they hustled me away because it was getting laughable at point. You can't keep doing this and keep doing it. And that's what happens when you become a so-called professional hoaxer. There is a law of diminishing return. And you reach that point where suddenly you either run out of ammunition or you become so well known, you know, like Baron, what's his name, from London, who we used to have his hoaxes going on television everywhere. And he became so well known. You remember his name, Paul? Pardon? That's right. Thank you. And you will receive a silver star for that. I think. I'm not sure. Is there any question, you know, as we go rambling on here, does anybody have a question? Because, you know, getting Idi Amin married to a wasp was a big, big hoax in New York. My friend Maxwell Sackheim was a retired advertising man who lived in Clearwater, Florida. And he was so upset because when he retired down there in the early 70s, there was, in Clearwater, he read in the paper that every week an airplane would fly from down at the end of Florida or from Uganda and bring a private plane that would return with cigars, caviar, and expensive wines, all going to the Ugandan chief, who was a murderer. Idi Amin had killed and ravaged people in his country, the thousands and thousands. Now here he is safely living high on the hog. And my friend Max Sackheim called me and said, Alan, you got to embarrass him somehow. I said, okay, what if he stole aboard that plane from South Africa and flew to Miami, and then on in Miami, he got on a Greyhound bus, got to New York, and married a wasp. And then he became an American citizen by marrying a wasp. Oh yeah, let's do that, it'd be great. We want to embarrass the State Department. And that was the big news conference that I staged at that time with this killer, Uganda. And we pulled it off beautifully. You know, we had a lookalike I found on the subway, a big 250-pound African-American guy who was unemployed, and he agreed to spend the weekend for a few dollars posing as Idi Amin. And all he had to do was not open his mouth. Just don't say anything. Don't say anything. Okay, just look mean. Oh yeah, okay. So he looked mean, and we had our followers, our pranksters. And this is back in, I think it was 1982, around in there. We went over to Tiffany's, and they locked the doors privately for Idi Amin to look over all the jewelry. And he's walking around throwing $250,000 bracelets on the floor saying junk. It's all junk. And the store manager was so excited to hear he locked the doors just for Idi Amin, who's in New York. Wow, what's going to happen? Well, the news media heard about it, and the next day at the news conference, we were absolutely stormed by over 150 reporters who wanted to see Idi Amin marry a wasp. We had the first selectman of New Fairfield, Connecticut, pose as the administrator of the ward to get married, and he was high. He had been drinking all day, so he was quite inebriated. And but he was first selectman, you know, in Connecticut, and he was falling down, and Idi Amin, the man from the subway, was falling down, and the bride was crying. She wanted to renegotiate her prenuptials, and so her lawyer was present, and Frank Regallo, our good partner, was there for that reason too. So it was a ball. It was a wild, crazy, crazy scene at the St. Regis Hotel, once again, in New York City. We created a lot of stunts in the city's hotel rooms. They're such wonderful places to pull off fake news as being real. And I've been doing the fake news syndrome since probably the last 70-some years, at least. And it's printed as fact, which often amazes me because, come on, folks, look at the real thing here. What's happening? What's happening? It works. It works. For example, I've tried to get into Macy's parade for years, and they will let you in unless you work for Macy's on Thanksgiving or Disney World. And we had no contacts with them whatsoever. But a few years ago, I had my friends dress up as pilgrims and Indians, and we had a convertible, and we decorated it. And we, at 59th Street in Columbus Circle, when they slowed down for the Macy's parade on Thanksgiving, we drove the decorated car in with pilgrims and Indians on the convertible, all dressed appropriately. And I had a conga drum, and I was playing a conga beat dressed as an Indian. And we drove down in front of Macy's, and suddenly the clipboard guys are going nuts. Who invited the pilgrims? Who invited Indians? It's Thanksgiving, guys, come on. And sure enough, we got all the media attention, incredible attention from the media. And they had a big laugh over it. They loved it because we got in the parade that way. But we couldn't get in legally because every year for about 20 years I'd apply to Macy's or Disney, can we have a float in the parade with Indians and pilgrims? And the answer is no. You're not working for Disney, you're not working for Macy's. Say goodbye. Well, I know that's not fair. That is not fair. And my wife Jeannie has suggested that even the pilgrims should be allowed to have casinos like the Indians. So she wrote a column for me. I have several of them called Questionable Commentaries, and it's allowing the pilgrims to have their own gambling casino because they've been denied. The Indians have them. Why not pilgrims? They were here first too, you know. We'll see what happens. That's going through the courts right now, by the way. Anyone have a particular question? Oh, you have Pete?
We do this since, sadly, they're going to kick us out of this room at 9:30. And I want everybody to have a chance to come and greet you. So if it's all right, we'll wrap up now. I could listen to you forever, but we'll wrap up now.
I don't think that.
We'll take some time
Peter, that's not very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Oh, thank you. You're better. Did you? Yeah, okay. I just wanted to mention, I saw Peter discuss Shakespeare for an hour on one of his critiques where he talks about all the different Shakespearean plays and analyzes them for an hour nonstop. He never made a mistake. He never stopped. And I told him he raised the bar too high. People like us down below, we hate you for that. Stop it. Stop it.
Alan, please.
Thank you
so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So, as Alan takes a seat down there, and I think all of our presenters are in the front row here, we like to have a Q&A at the end in general, but we'll skip that tonight because it's so late. And I'll invite all of you to just talk to everybody, come up and give your personal thanks to them, spend some time outside to, I'm sorry?
One question? Yeah, is that all right? Is that all right? What's the question?
Yeah, what is it?
This is one. All right. I have a question for the organizer of this event. I take it to be you, correct?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Well, this event is open to the public, not just to DePaul University, and I'll qualify this by saying I've been to a few events, and they're super interesting, and I tend to learn a lot, but I was very disappointed by this event. It was a letdown.
Oh.
I thought Pavarotti was going to be here. I had my mom on the phone because it was the one thing she wanted to hear before she passed on, and she's in a nursing home. Some of us have jobs. Some of us work for a living. I took the night off from my night gig. I work overnights. I mean, I don't think I'm just speaking for myself. I think I'm speaking for other people here too. This is not just about some academic elitist hoax thing. This is about people. There are other people here besides DePaul, and if you're going to invite other people...
Well, we're really late, and I'm not sure if this is real or not, but if it isn't, then that's hilarious. But if it is, then let me just say that I try my best. We try our best with what we do here, and I'm really sorry if you didn't end up liking it. That's just the opposite of what I always wanted. But I'm glad you came out, and maybe we can talk about it later ourselves.
Well, thank you. I think everyone is owed an apology for this.
Well, you think we owe everyone an apology?
I'm sorry I wasn't even listening.
Oh, you weren't. See, I think that's the right approach.
And that's the crux of it, right? We have all these people here who come out, who take time off. Some people who actually have to make money, who have to make a living. And then they end up being disappointed. They end up feeling like...
Well, again, I'm just really sorry for you. I apologize. I apologize. Okay. I think you should sit down now, maybe.
Well, what else could you offer, maybe?
You can stick around, talk to our guests, have a good time. You can meet the guy who played Pavarotti.
I wanted to meet the real Pavarotti, and I feel like you have triggered me. I feel like there's nothing that's going to get me...
All right, you know what? Maybe you should just sit down, all right? Maybe just sit down, because we had a nice night here, and we had a lot of people giving their heart to this. And just to have it be ruined by one person, whether this is real or not, is just really ridiculous. I said I think it's time to sit down, all right? Sit down. It's over. Anna, will you get his mic? It's been a long night, man. I mean, we've had fun, but that's just ridiculous. If it was a joke or it was not a joke, it's just stupid. You're just stupid. You know that, right? You're a moron. This is a really hard thing that I do know. And this is a hard thing. And I don't know if anybody knows that. To put on like 20 events a year like we do. And do you know what our budget is? It's a tiny fraction of what all the other Humanities Center. And I always end up saying, oh, I had a great time. I hope you had a great time. And I hardly ever mean it because idiots like that, a human piece of garbage like that, comes in and tries to ruin everything. Yeah, that's right. You walk out. You better walk out because nobody wants anything to do with you.
With each day so full of joy, why should any heart
bit to the sounds of Andy Kaufman singing about a friendly world. Can you get that gentleman back in here? Please.
And now,
Anna,
everybody,
can you go find him?
put your arm around the person sitting next to you and sway back and forth and listen to the music. Okay, come on, everybody. Come on, you at home. Come on, even if you don't like the person sitting next to you. Okay, come on. And now everybody
sing. The person beside you. Put your arm around that person. The Title IX officer is not here tonight. Put your arm around that person. Sway back and forth. Have a nice time together.
Hey, guy. Come on, guy.
Yeah, there he is. Logan Breitbart, my friend, my ex-student. He's a great artist, actor. He's a poet, really good guy.
The sky so full of stars and the river full of song. And the river so full of song. Every heart should be so thankful.
So whether or not you were fooled, maybe you think a little bit about whose sympathy you have and what side you end up on, and think a little bit about living a more exciting life. I had a great time tonight. I hope you had a great time. I'll see you at the next one. Good night, everybody.
Okay, you want to sing it again? Okay, one more time. Come on, everybody. Oh.